turning our apartment into a romantic French restaurant. In the first part, I told you everything about how I came up with my 3-course menu for a Valentine's dinner at home, and we also went grocery shopping. Now in this part, I'm going to show you everything I've prepped, and because cooking is my ultimate love language, I challenged myself and created a sauce that takes about 2 days to fully develop. I experimented and came up with a grand jus, which means cooking down bottles of red wine with some veggies and tomato paste, and to this base, a ton of roasted veal bones are added, and on top of that, I add a homemade chicken stock. I do my very best to Tetris the bones into my pot, and eventually everything fits perfectly. Then I put some ice on top and let it cook down while skimming off the foam. And after just a few hours, it already smells incredible. So this one is gonna stay on the stove for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, I prepare the chocolate crust for my tart, which needs to chill in the fridge before baking. Then I cook down raspberries and strain them through a fine mesh strainer. Next, I add chocolate and hot cream to a bowl to make a milk chocolate ganache, which I cover with cling film and let it rest in the fridge overnight. Now it's time to roll out the tart crust. I already mentioned that this is my first ever sweet tart, and honestly I don't really know what I'm doing here, but this crust is now about to get blind baked. After letting it cool down, I mix my raspberry puree with gelatin and spread it right on top of the chocolate crust. Meanwhile, it has turned to evening, and we're gonna take all the bones out and strain the sauce base in several steps. And now it's time to go to bed. See you tomorrow, sauce! So today is the final day. The sauce base has jellied and all the remaining fat has risen to the top. So I scrape it all off and heat it on low until it turns liquid again, because now it's time for our short ribs. And the moment I started trimming the ribs, my boyfriend appeared out of nowhere, and of course he took over the process, and honestly he did that beautifully. So those majestic ribs get seared on both sides, then the sauce base goes right into the pot as well, and the ribs are about to be braised in that actual liquid gold for the next 5 hours. Meanwhile, I prep the herbs and spices that will go into the pot later. Then I whip up the milk chocolate ganache. I think I should have added some cold heavy cream to make it a bit creamier and fluffier, but nevertheless it turned out amazing. So I pipe this whipped ganache as the final layer of my chocolate raspberry tart and top it off with a dusting of freeze-dried strawberries. Now onto the final preps for the day of our Valentine's dinner. I add the herbs and spices to the ribs for about 30 minutes, then cook down the sauce to its essence. And meanwhile, I prep the blood oranges and chicory for the appetizer, and lastly I make the artichoke dip so it's ready to go into the oven. And that's it for now. See you in part 3.